everybody, and welcome to the Real Estate and Building Future-Proof Conference. I hope you've been enjoying the agenda so far. My name is Shaun Taylor. I'm the International IoT Director at Facilio, and I've over 30 years experience in controls, automation and smart buildings, which I guess is why I've been asked to take part in this track. I'm delighted today to be joined by Nick Cooper, who's the Sales and Marketing Director at Forest Rock, and I'll let Nick introduce himself shortly. Nick and I have been asked to cover the track Accelerating Smart Building Success with a New and Improved System Integration Model. This will be a 20-minute session. Nick and I will be talking through some of the key factors in the first sort of 10 minutes or so, and then we'll wrap up with a Q&A session at the end. So please ask questions through the chat box, and then Nick and I will run through those. And even if we run out of time, we promise we'll get back to you offline. So first of all, I think I just once again welcome Nick for joining us. Thanks for joining us, Nick. Maybe you could briefly introduce yourself and Forest Rock before we move into the demo as a whole.
Yeah, sure. Of course. Thanks, Shaun. Thanks for the Nick Cooper, Smart Buildings Consultant and Sales and Marketing Director for Forest Rock. Similar to yourself, Shaun, I've been in the industry for around about 35 years or so, and working within IoT and specifically smart buildings and smart cities as well, and all things really connected devices and points. So integration is a big thing. A word about Forest Rock: we're an integrator. We act as the on a number of schemes, and really we kind of describe ourselves as the glue in the middle, if you like. So just developing software and so on to get systems and devices to talk a common language and protocol. So that's really what Forest Rock are about, and that's me as well, Shaun.
Oh, we've definitely got the right guy on the 70 years between us, so we should be able to cover this off. So the title of the track, as I said earlier, Accelerating Smart Building Success with New and Improved System Integration. So I think what we could start off with, Nick, is talk about some of the changes that you're seeing happening in the smart buildings market today, both in systems and devices, and maybe quickly highlight some of the shift and change that you're seeing at the moment.
Yeah, sure, of course. I mean, one of the things that I guess is fairly obvious, we've seen an awful lot of new devices in the market, a lot of IoT devices, and it's working out very quickly what's most relevant and how these devices and systems, and I'd include software with that as well, can fit together. I think really it's the expectations around smart buildings and how they evolve, and really a lot of that is down to the end user. We need to understand what end users really want, and we need to provide something that's centrally connected and is able to harness data, existing data and new data, in a more modern data-driven way than previously.
And we've both been in this arena, as we said earlier, for a long time, but for at least 20 years, people have been talking about smart buildings. But when the industry's never really, delivered on the hype, if that's the right way of putting it. What are some of the blockers and bottlenecks that you've seen in people actually deploying smart building solutions, connecting systems, etc.? So what are some of those barriers that you think have stopped the full-scale deployment up to now?
It's a great point that you make, isn't it, Shaun? Because we've seen for years now. I mean, we've been working in what we called IoT for some sort of 10 years, I guess, in some sense, and things have evolved. But really, some of the blockers and bottlenecks are not that different to what we saw previously, where systems are siloed, buildings are definitely siloed, different service providers and contractors, and no real continuity or no real, I would say, blueprint for smart buildings. And hardware and software clashes, and as I said, in the role of Forest Rock, trying to become the glue and make all of these things work cohesively and together in a common way. So there's an awful lot of bottlenecks that have existed for many years, and they haven't yet been worked through to where we are today, even, to understand what a smart building blueprint really needs to look like, to not just simplify that, but to actually put something forward that is going to work for everybody.
And I think one of the key things I've seen is the sort of everybody's been trying to own it. So you've had a large amount of vendor lock-in with single source, suppliers with lack of interoperability, etc. So, people actually not just saying they're open, but having open platforms that can integrate and be interoperable, I think has been, one of the key blockers is just commercial blockers where people have been trying to, continue with a lockdown proprietary solution to something that really needs to be a collaborative ecosystem rather than any one person having it covered. So yeah, I think they're good points there.
Definitely.
So if we've got an issue with different protocols, different naming conventions, etc., how can data unification or data middleware play a role in kind of resolving this further?
Well, the point you make again is really good. We've seen siloed systems, we've seen disparate systems, and that includes software as well as hardware. Now, a lot of the industry is moving towards software, and rightly so, and using standard IT protocols as well, like MQTT is definitely a step in the right direction, and standard naming conventions, brick schemas and haystack tagging for a start. So I think the data unification piece is huge. That really is where all of the knowledge and understanding sits, and how we can deploy data, and data is best used by users and tenants and building operators. But really, for me, Shaun, it comes down to this unification piece. It's getting the right software in place that's going to aggregate the data in terms of cloud platforms and where that's stored and how that data is presented. That's for me really where this is key. Get that right, and I think we're on the right path to a successful rollout of smart buildings.
Yeah, good points. And I think as engineers, we've spent the first half of this discussion talking about technology, interoperability, etc. But I guess you come up with saying, well, so what? It's great technology, it's cool, but what's in it for a customer? So if we can get this right, what kind of value can we deliver customers? What's in it for a customer, Nick?
I think a simple thing, Shaun, is actually let's find out what the customers really want. Let's understand their outputs and desires and work backwards from that. So if we can establish what connectivity and what supports that remote automation, we take the operational data and democratize it. We can create a common data model that supports all of these multiple applications that we've seen. That's really what's in it for the customer. So the customer is able to use their building or portfolio of buildings in many cases and understand who needs to see what data and when. It's not just about operational costs, it's ongoing costs really, an ongoing operation of their portfolio of buildings, so that the data can be presented to a number of people in a variety of ways, and they're able to actually take that data and use it in a more meaningful way.
And I think, the term smart building, kind of infers some level of intelligence and flexibility. And that's one of the things that we've really seen in the last year or so with COVID and the change in how folk use buildings, the ability of really have platforms that change maybe their operational workflows for COVID mitigation, or they've gone from having flexible working, those kind of things. So I think they're both real good examples as well of the kind of customer benefits that smart buildings can deliver. We're kind of almost out of time. We've got a couple minutes left, Nick. So I think what would be great is just have some passing thoughts from you on a brief summary of what we've discussed, and really, how out in the future in the IoT and smart buildings.
Sure. I mean, it's always difficult looking forward, isn't it? But I think we're making, certainly in inroads now, we're seeing definite acceleration, which ultimately what we're looking for to get to not just necessarily a standard blueprint for all smart buildings, but to understand really what clients want. And I think to summarise is to how we present data. So it's important to have the right platform. I think that's first and foremost. Let's have the right platform in place. It's going to present that data to multiple users and multiple applications. For me, Shaun, that's really key. We get that right, and then we can build on that. So what I'm looking for is buildings that can plug and play, and we could add other technologies in a simplified plug and play way in the future. But get the platform right, and then we're able to move forward with that.
Yeah, and that's a great point. So from an acceleration point of view, select the right platform rather than trying to create your own, and then there's something that you can build on today and tomorrow. So I think that's great advice. We're pretty much out of time now. So Nick, I'd love to thank you once again for taking time out to join us today. I know you're hanging on for the Q&A session as well, so grateful for you doing that. For the people that joined this track, thank you very much for joining. Feel free to reach out to Nick or myself on LinkedIn. And we'll now briefly go through as many of the Q&As as we can. And once again, thanks for your time and keep safe, everyone. Thank you. The question that we were just talking through there, and it was really on COVID mitigation. Can smart buildings help with COVID mitigation? And absolutely, we have clients that are using smart platforms that they had set up prior to COVID. Their world has changed. They've moved to an approach of flexible working, etc. The ability to use a smart platform to change maybe standard operating procedures or introduce fresh air purge regimes, or social distancing with availability of desks, etc. Smart buildings have enabled building owners to be very agile and change very quickly to adopt the needs of COVID. And it's also been very easy to do that at scale. So you can deploy those kind of changes to one building fairly easily. But if you have a portfolio of 50, 100 buildings, very difficult to roll those kind of changes to operating procedures out, building by building. It would take hundreds of man hours. Again, with a smart platform, you can effect those operating procedures once and then deploy them across your portfolio. So yeah, smart buildings have been a really powerful tool, and we've seen COVID really as an accelerator of the adoption of these kind of technologies as well. So yeah, now we've got the mic working. Next question we had is, and I'll aim this one to you, Nick, if you want to pick it up. Is this technology only relevant to new buildings, or can we apply smart building technology to existing buildings? So Nick, if you're able to pick that one up, great. Otherwise, I'll dive in. Yeah, so it looks like Nick is also having some microphone issues, so I'll pick that one up as well then. So absolutely, you can use the smart building technology. Yes, a brand new sexy building with a full integrated smart building is great, but 90% of the buildings and 90% of the opportunities for us and our clients are buildings that already exist. And absolutely, you can use a smart building platform or framework to sit on top of some of those legacy systems. So systems such as your BMS systems, your lighting control, access control, all of those systems can be integrated into a smart platform such as Facilio. And we can also bring in data sets that are external to the building. So typical examples could be the weather forecast or the energy provider's tariff and API data. So there may be some automated energy management going on within the platform. So absolutely, smart building technology can be deployed into existing stock. It's really important to find, a platform and a framework that can be used to integrate with those existing systems, leverage that data, normalize it, and then serve it to the consumers of that data in a relevant form. So whether that be the maintenance technician or the tenant on the floor, or the owner of that piece of real estate, that data can be sliced and diced and served to the people in an appropriate way. So I think looking at the clock here, we've got time to cover off one more question. And this question was really on naming conventions. So the question was, can there be some automation? So again, I think somebody has got some experience there of having to sort of manually map data in from different protocols, different naming conventions. So good question. It sounds like somebody's been through some pain there. And absolutely, there can be a high level of automation in the onboarding and normalization of naming conventions. So obviously, with a brand new building, if we have the luxury of a BIM model or something and an agreed naming convention within Kobe or Revit files, etc., then that can be mapped in, or BMS may use Haystack. So those kind of naming conventions make life easy for us. But where we have disparate data sets, different naming conventions that may go down just to the individual and how they name them, then we can build some intelligence, because within a smart platform, that intelligence can recognize different ways of naming the same assets and go through a process of normalizing that into a common data set. So we can heavily automate it. There's still some initial setup that would be required if you had very different naming conventions that you were trying to normalize. But once the technology has learned those naming tags, etc., once, then it will recognize them the next time around. So it becomes more and more automated as you deploy at scale. So I think that takes us to the end of this track. Thank you everyone for joining. Apologies that we had a mic issue there, but I think we managed to overcome it. I'll hand back to Mikhail and enjoy the rest of the conference, everybody. Thank you.